The paper curled and blackened in the flames, edges glowing orange before crumbling to ash. Clara watched the contract that made her property, bought and paid for like livestock, turn to nothing in the iron stove. Across the dim cabin, the mountain man who'd just destroyed his legal claim to her stood silent, firelight catching the hard angles of his face. "You're free to go," he said, voice rough as gravel. "Or stay on your own terms. Your choice." She stared at him, this stranger who'd traded 4 months' wages for a piece of paper with her name on it, then burned it without hesitation. Nothing in her 26 years had prepared her for this moment. 3 weeks earlier, Clara Brennan had been kneading bread in her father's kitchen when the door crashed open. 2 men in city suits walked in without knocking, and her father's face went gray as winter sky. "Mr. Brennan," the taller one said, pulling papers from a leather case. "Your note came due 2 months ago. We've been patient." Her father sagged into his chair. "The timber contract fell through. I just need another month. You've had extensions. The bank's calling the debt." The man's eyes moved to Clara, cold and calculating. "Unless you've got assets we haven't accounted for." The silence that followed felt like falling. Clara had always known her father was drowning. After her mother died 4 winters back, he'd borrowed against the homestead to keep their 160 acres, then borrowed more when the well ran dry, then more when the feed prices climbed. Each loan was supposed to fix everything. Each one dug them deeper. "There is one option," the shorter man said, still watching Clara. "Gentleman up in the high countries looking for a wife. Widower, owns good land. He's authorized us to settle debts in exchange for introductions to suitable women." Her father's head came up. "No, absolutely not. $400 would clear your note entirely. You'd keep the homestead." I said no. But Clara saw the desperation in his eyes, saw the stack of foreclosure notices on the kitchen shelf, saw her 2 younger brothers sleeping in the loft, unaware that everything was coming apart. That night, she confronted him. "How bad is it?" He wouldn't meet her eyes. "They'll take the land in 2 weeks. I've got nowhere else to turn, Clara. The boys, they're only 14 and 12. Where would they go?" She thought of her brothers losing the only home they'd known, thought of her father broken and shamed, thought of the years she'd already spent as unpaid labor on this failing homestead, cooking and cleaning and mending while other women her age built their own lives. "What's his name?" she asked quietly. "Clara, no, what's his name?" Her father's hands shook. "Brennan. Thomas Brennan. No relation. He's got a timber claim in the Bitterroot foothills. They say he's hard. Keeps to himself. Is he cruel?" "I don't know." Her father's voice cracked. "I don't know anything except I've destroyed this family and I can't fix it." The transaction happened fast. The bank men returned with a contract, not a marriage certificate, but a bill of sale dressed in legal language. In exchange for $400 paid to her father's creditors, Clara Brennan would relocate to Thomas Brennan's property to fulfill domestic duties as determined by the contract holder. She was given 3 days to prepare. Her father wept the morning she left. Her brothers stood stiff and confused, too young to fully understand. The bank men loaded her trunk onto a wagon and drove her north into the mountains, higher and higher until the valley disappeared and the air turned knife-sharp with pine and altitude. The cabin sat in a clearing carved from dense forest. Solid logs, stone chimney, oiled canvas windows. Bigger than she expected. Newer. Thomas Brennan stood in the doorway. He was massive, shoulders like an ox yoke, arms thick with the kind of muscle that came from splitting timber and hauling stone. Dark beard, darker eyes, face weathered by wind and sun. He wore canvas, trousers and a wool shirt with the sleeves rolled back, revealing forearms corded with strength. He looked at her the way you'd look at a stray dog, wary, uncertain what to do with it. The bank men handed him the contract. He read it slowly, jaw tightening. Then he looked at Clara. "You agree to this?" She lifted her chin. "I agreed to save my family's land." Something shifted in his expression. He paid the men, sent them away, and carried her trunk inside without a word. The cabin was sparse but clean. Table, chairs, a rope bed in one corner, shelves lined with supplies. A second room stood closed off. "That's mine," he said, nodding toward it. "They'll take the main room. I'll rig a curtain for privacy." She blinked. "The contract says, I know what it says." He tossed the papers onto the table. "I'll cut firewood. You settle in." He walked out, and Clara stood alone in the strange cabin, her life compressed into one trunk and a legal document that made her someone's property. That night, he built up the fire and pulled the contract from the table. He held it over the stove, eyes on hers. "No person should be owned," he said, and he let it burn. Clara didn't move for a long moment after the contract turned to ash. The mountain man, Thomas, stood with his arms crossed, expression unreadable in the firelight. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why what? Why pay $400 just to destroy the proof you paid it?" He poured coffee from a battered pot, handed her a tin cup. "Needed a housekeeper. Didn't need a slave. The bank thinks I'm bound here. The bank can think whatever it wants. You're not." He sat across from her, the table between them. "You can leave tomorrow if you want. I'll give you enough to reach Missoula. Set yourself up." Clara wrapped her hands around the cup's warmth. Every instinct told her to be suspicious. Men didn't throw away $400 for nothing. But she'd seen the disgust on his face when he read that contract. Seen something honest in the way he'd burned it. "And if I stay, I'll pay you wages. $2 a week, plus room and board. You keep the house, cook, manage supplies. I work the timber claim." His eyes were steady, separate, respectful. "You'll have privacy and your own space." It was more than she'd ever been offered. More than she'd imagined possible when those bank men walked into her father's kitchen. "1 month," she said. "We'll see how it works." The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but close. "Fair." The next weeks fell into rhythm. Thomas left at first light, disappearing into the dense timber with his axe and crosscut saw. Clara scrubbed the cabin until it gleamed, organized the chaotic shelves, mended his shirts where the seams had pulled apart from string. He was gone most days, returning at dusk smelling of pine resin and sweat, his hands scarred and calloused. He'd wash at the basin outside, eat whatever she'd prepared without complaint, then retreat to his room. He spoke rarely, but when he did, his words were deliberate. He asked if she needed anything from the trading post 12 miles down the mountain. He showed her where he kept the rifle in case of bears. He built her a proper privacy screen from canvas and pine, careful to give her space. She learned him through details. The way he kept his tools immaculate, every blade sharp and oiled. The stack of books in his room, mathematics, forestry, a worn copy of Whitman's poems. The careful way he ate, as if he'd once known hunger and never forgot it. One evening, 3 weeks in, she asked, "What happened to your wife?" He went still, template halfway to his mouth. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. "Fever. 2 winters back." His voice was flat, scraped clean of emotion. She was from town originally. Hated the isolation. I thought if I built something good enough, she'd grow to like it. I'm sorry. She deserved better than this." He gestured at the cabin, the endless trees beyond. Someone who could give her people society, not just silence and timber. Clara set down her fork. Some people don't want society. They want peace. He looked at her then, really looked, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. The understanding of 2 people who'd been ground down by other people's expectations. The trouble came on a cold morning in October. Clara was pulling water from the well when she heard horses. 3 riders emerged from the tree line, rough men in dirty canvas coats, with eyes that crawled over her like insects. "Well, look here," the lead rider said, grinning through broken teeth. "Brennan got himself a pretty little housekeeper." She straightened, pulse hammering. "Mr. Brennan's working his claim. You'll need to come back later. We're not here for him." The man dismounted, walked closer. "Heard he bought himself a woman from down valley. Paid good money too. That you?" Clara's hands tightened on the bucket handle. "I work here. That's all. See, that's not what we heard." He pulled the flask from his coat. "Heard he's got papers on you. Legal and everything. Which makes you property, sweetheart. And property can be seized for debt." Her blood went cold. "What debt?" "Your old man. Borrowed from more than just the bank. My employer holds a note too, $160. Since you're collateral now, we're here to collect." It was a lie. Had to be. But these men didn't care about truth. They saw a woman alone, miles from help. "Get off this land," she said, voice shaking. The man left. His companions spread out, flanking her. Then a voice cut through the clearing like an axe through frozen wood. "Touch her, and you die here." Thomas stood at the tree line, the massive crosscut saw still in his hands. He'd heard the horses. Sawdust covered his shoulders and clung to his dark beard, and his eyes held something Clara had never seen before: pure, controlled violence. The three men turned. The leader tried to bluff. "This is business, Brennan. Her father's debts are paid. I have receipts from the bank." "Not the bank. Private loan." Thomas walked forward, still holding the saw. Up close, the blade looked big enough to fell a tree in 3 strokes. Big enough to cut a man in half. "You have paperwork?" Thomas asked quietly. "Don't need it. Everyone knows. Get off my land." Thomas's voice dropped to something barely human. "Right now, or I'll bury you so deep in these woods, your own mothers won't find the bones." The clearing went silent except for wind in the high pines. The men saw something in Thomas's face that convinced them. They mounted fast and rode hard, disappearing into the timber. Clara realized she was shaking. Thomas set down the saw and crossed to her. "You hurt?" She shook her head. "They'll come back," he said grimly. "Men like that don't quit. They'll bring more next time." "I'll leave," Clara said quickly. "I won't bring this down on you." "No." The word was iron. "You're under my protection. That means something. You don't owe me anything. The contract's gone." Thomas gripped her shoulders, gentle but firm. "The contract was garbage. This is different. You're part of this place now, Clara. And I don't abandon what's mine to protect." The raw certainty in his voice nearly broke her. Thomas spent the next 2 days preparing. He rode to the trading post and returned with a Winchester repeater, 2 boxes of ammunition, and a grim expression. He reinforced the cabin's door with iron brackets and taught Clara to load and fire the rifle. "You aim center mass," he said, guiding her hands on the stock. "Don't hesitate. Don't warn them. Just shoot." His hands were warm over hers, steady and sure. Clara felt the solid strength of him at her back, and something shifted in her chest. Gratitude, yes, but deeper. Trust. The bone-deep certainty that this man would stand between her and anything that meant her harm. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. Thomas didn't answer right away. He stepped back, checked the rifle's sight. "My wife used to ask me why I came up here. She thought I was running from something." "Were you?" "Yeah. From a world where everything's bought and sold, where money means more than people." He met her eyes. "Then I turned around and participated in the exact system I hated. Bought you like you were timber or livestock. Told myself it was different because I'd treat you fair, but it wasn't different at all. You burned the contract. Should never have signed it in the first place." His jaw worked. "You deserve choice from the start. I'm trying to give you that now." Clara set the rifle down carefully. "I choose to stay." Something blazed in his dark eyes. Hope, fierce and sudden. The men returned 4 days later, just before dawn. 6 of them this time, moving quiet through the gray light. Clara woke to Thomas's hand on her shoulder and his urgent whisper. "Get the rifle. Stay low." They took positions at opposite windows. Through the oiled canvas, Clara saw shapes moving between the trees. "Brennan," a voice called out. "Send the woman out, and we'll leave peaceful." Thomas's answer was to rack around into the Winchester's chamber. The sound echoed like breaking bone. "Last chance," the voice shouted. "Come take her." Thomas called back, voice carrying clear and cold. "See what it cost you." The first man broke from cover, running toward the cabin. Thomas fired once. The shot cracked sharp and the man went down, clutching his leg, screaming. "Not dead. Deliberate." "Next one's through the heart," Thomas shouted. 2 more rushed from different angles. Thomas moved like controlled lightning, fired, racked, fired again. 1 man dropped. The other dove behind the woodpile. Clara saw movement at her window. A man climbing toward the canvas. She didn't think. Just raised the rifle like Thomas taught her and fired. The recoil slammed her shoulder. The man fell backward with a yell, crashing into the dirt. She'd hit his arm. Blood bloomed dark on his sleeve. "Good," Thomas said, voice steady. "Keep your position." The fight lasted maybe 10 minutes, but felt like hours. Thomas was brutally efficient, using the cabin's walls for cover, never wasting ammunition. He didn't kill. Every shot was aimed to wound, to send a message. Finally, the voice called out again, shaky now. All right, we're leaving. Tell whoever sent you." Thomas shouted. "That Clara Brennan is under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Spread that word far and wide." The men retreated, dragging their wounded. Clara listened to hoofbeats fade into the timber, then lowered the rifle. Her hands were shaking violently now that it was over. Thomas crossed to her, took the rifle gently, set it aside. Then he pulled her close, his massive arms wrapping around her like a fortress. She collapsed into him, pressing her face against his chest. He smelled of gunpowder and pine and something essentially him. His heart hammered under her ear. He'd been terrified too, she realized. Not for himself. For her. It's over, he murmured into her hair. You're safe. She pulled back enough to look up at him. Thomas. Whatever she meant to say dissolved when she saw his face. The careful distance he'd maintained for weeks was gone, burned away by fear and firelight. What remained was raw and honest and entirely focused on her. I can't be neutral anymore, he said roughly. Can't pretend this is just an arrangement. Those men came for you, and I would have killed every one of them without hesitation. That's not how you feel about an employee, Clara. Her breath caught. How do you feel? Like you're the first thing that's made sense in 2 years. Like this cabin was just logs and stone until you made it a home. Like I fight the whole territory to keep you safe. His hand came up, rough palm cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. Like I'm halfway in love with you and trying real hard not to be, because you deserve better than a mountain hermit who bought you out of desperation. Clara's eyes burned. You gave me choice when nobody else ever did. You protected me. You saw me as a person, not property or burden or bargaining chip. She covered his hand with hers. That's not desperation, Thomas. That's decency. And it's more than I ever hoped for. Clara, she kissed him, rose on her toes and pressed her mouth to his. Tasting coffee and courage and the future, she suddenly wanted more than air. He froze for one shocked heartbeat. Then he kissed her back, deep and certain, his arms tightening until she couldn't tell where she ended, and he began. When they finally broke apart, Thomas rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Not for wages or safety. Stay because you want this. Want me. Want the life we could build. Yes, Clara said. Simple. Sure. Yes. They were married by a traveling preacher that November, a real ceremony with freely spoken vows. Clara wore a dress she sewed herself from fabric Thomas rode 2 days to buy. He wore a clean shirt and looked at her like she'd hung the stars. Her father and brothers came up for the wedding. Her father wept again, but different this time, with relief, seeing his daughter truly chosen, truly cherished. The timber claim prospered. Thomas hired men to help with the heavy work, paid them fair wages. Clara managed the books and expanded their operation, her sharp mind for numbers making them more profitable than Thomas alone ever could. 3 years later, standing on the porch of their expanded cabin with Thomas's arm around her waist and their infant daughter sleeping against her shoulder, Clara looked out over the valley they'd carved from wilderness and debt and fear. Regret it? Thomas asked softly, reading her mind the way he'd learned to do. She leaned into his solid warmth, breathing the pine-sharp air. Not 1 second. He kissed her temple, his free hand gentle on their daughter's dark head. The child had his eyes and Clara's stubborn chin, already fierce, already free. In the distance, smoke rose from neighboring claims, other families building their own futures in the high timber. The world was changing, slowly. Clara made sure of it, writing letters to territorial representatives about debt slavery and women's property rights, pushing back against the system that had tried to break her. But here, in this moment, the fight was won. She'd been sold like property and found a man who gave her freedom, been offered no choice and built a life on her own terms. The mountain man had burned the papers that bound her. Together, they built something that could never be bought or sold or taken away. They built home.